My wife mocked me for being too naive about trust. But when I discovered she had been secretly recording our private conversations and sharing them with her sister, I realized the betrayal was deeper than marriage. I played one of the recordings at a family dinner. Her smirk vanished as everyone listened. I didn't expect to hear my own voice echoing from her phone. It happened on a quiet Tuesday morning, sunlight barely touching the kitchen tiles. She had left her phone on the counter while stepping outside to take a delivery. A notification popped up, an audio file sent to her sister. I tapped it without thinking, assuming it was something harmless. But the moment I heard myself speaking, my breath caught. It was a private conversation from the night before. A conversation we had alone in our bedroom with the door closed. I paused the recording immediately, my heart thudding in my chest. I didn't listen to the whole thing. I didn't need to. The shock alone was enough to make my hands tremble. I set the phone down exactly where it had been and stepped back, trying to steady my breathing before she walked in. That was the moment everything shifted. But the truth is, the signs had been there long before that morning. I just didn't want to see them. She used to tease me gently, calling me too trusting, whenever I believed someone's word or gave someone the benefit of the doubt. At first, it felt playful, like a private joke between us. She'd smile, shake her head and say, "You're too soft for your own good." I'd laugh it off, thinking she meant it affectionately. But over time her tone changed. The smile faded. The teasing sharpened. She'd say it during small disagreements, like when I forgot to double-check a bill or believed a neighbor's excuse. "You're too trusting," she'd repeat, but now it sounded like a flaw. A weakness. Something she was tired of dealing with. I tried not to take it personally. I told myself she was stressed or tired or just joking. But the sting lingered. Then came the strange moments, little things that didn't make sense at the time. She'd repeat something I had said privately, almost word for word, even though I didn't remember telling her again. Once I mentioned a worry I had about work while brushing my teeth, speaking softly, half to myself. The next day she brought it up casually at breakfast, repeating the exact phrasing I had used. I remember staring at her, confused, wondering how she remembered something I barely remembered saying. Another time I told her about a childhood memory while we were lying in bed. A quiet moment. A vulnerable one. 2 days later her sister made a comment about it during a family lunch. Not a direct reference, but close enough that I felt my stomach twist. I looked at my wife and she avoided my eyes. Her sister's behavior changed too. She started giving me these odd looks, half amused, half knowing. She'd finish my sentences sometimes, or react to things I hadn't said out loud. Once she laughed before I even finished a story, as if she already knew the ending. I brushed it off as coincidence, but the discomfort stayed with me. Family gatherings became awkward. I'd walk into a room and feel conversations shift. Not dramatically, just enough to make me wonder if I had imagined it. I tried to stay polite, tried to keep things light, but something felt off. Like I was being watched. Or studied. The real turning point came one evening when I walked past the living room and heard my wife whispering on the phone. She lowered her voice the moment she heard my footsteps. I paused in the hallway, not wanting to eavesdrop but unable to move. Her tone was hushed, urgent. I heard my name once. Then silence. When I stepped into the room, she ended the call quickly and forced a smile. "Just talking to my sister," she said. I nodded, pretending not to notice the tension in her shoulders. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment in my mind. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself I was imagining things. But the uneasy feeling wouldn't go away. It sat in my chest like a weight, pressing down harder each day. Then came the night everything made sense. She had gone to bed early, leaving her laptop open on the couch. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't looking for anything. I simply went to close the lid so the battery wouldn't drain. But when I touched the trackpad, the screen lit up, revealing a folder I had never seen before. A folder with my name on it. My stomach tightened. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the mouse. Part of me wanted to walk away. Pretend I hadn't seen it. Pretend everything was fine. But the uneasy feeling, the one I had ignored for months, pushed me forward. I clicked the folder. Inside were audio files. Dozens of them. Each labeled with a date. Some recent. Some months old. My hands shook as I opened the first one. It was my voice. Talking about something personal. Something I had shared with her in confidence. I clicked another. And another. Each recording was a private moment. A quiet conversation. A vulnerable confession. All captured without my knowledge. All shared based on the timestamps shortly after they were recorded. I sat there frozen, staring at the screen, feeling a mix of disbelief and heartbreak. I didn't know whether to cry, scream, or shut the laptop and pretend I hadn't seen anything. Instead, I listened. Not to all of them. I couldn't. But enough to understand the truth. She hadn't just teased me for being trusting. She had taken advantage of it. She had recorded me. Shared me. Turned my private thoughts into entertainment. I closed the laptop slowly, my hands trembling. The room felt colder. The silence felt heavier. I looked toward the bedroom door where she slept peacefully, unaware that her secret was no longer a secret. In that moment, something inside me changed. Not anger. Not revenge. Just clarity. The uneasy feeling I had ignored for so long finally made sense. And I knew nothing between us would ever be the same again. I sat there for a long moment after closing the laptop, the glow of the screen fading from my eyes but not from my mind. The house felt too quiet, almost hollow, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I leaned back slowly, letting the weight of what I had just discovered settle into my chest. I wasn't ready to move. I wasn't ready to think. But I also couldn't pretend anymore. When I finally stood, my legs felt unsteady. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water and held it without drinking. My reflection in the window looked unfamiliar, tired, confused, and older than I felt. I set the glass down and returned to the living room, reopening the laptop with a steadier hand. This time I listened with intention. The first recording played softly through the speakers. My voice filled the room, calm, trusting, unaware. I heard myself talking about a worry I had shared with her late at night. But what made my stomach twist wasn't my voice. It was hers. She was laughing in the background. Not a gentle laugh. Not a supportive one. A laugh that sounded amused. Entertained. As if my vulnerability was a story she couldn't wait to retell. I clicked another file. Then another. Each one carried a different moment. Private thoughts, quiet confessions, small frustrations I had shared only with her. And in each one, I heard her voice in the background, sometimes whispering commentary, sometimes laughing, sometimes responding to her sister as if my feelings were part of a show. The heartbreak came slowly, like a wave rising inch by inch until it finally crashed. I felt disbelief first. How could she do this? Then clarity, she had been doing it for a long time. And then something deeper, something heavier. Acceptance. The truth wasn't new. It had been happening right in front of me. I had just refused to see it. I saved the recordings one by one. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. But because I needed to understand the full picture. I needed to know how far it went. I needed to protect myself from the part of me that still wanted to make excuses for her. Each file I saved felt heavier than the last. My hands shook, but my mind grew clearer. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't overthinking. I wasn't being too trusting. I was being recorded. Studied. When I finally closed the laptop, the room felt colder. I sat there in silence, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, the distant sound of a car passing outside. Everything felt sharper, louder, more real. The next morning she acted differently. She came into the kitchen humming, placing a cup of coffee in front of me with a bright smile. "Thought you might need this," she said, her voice unusually cheerful. I nodded, watching her carefully. She moved around the kitchen with a strange energy, too light, too forced. She asked about my sleep, my plans for the day, even offered to pack me lunch. It was the kind of sweetness she rarely showed, and it didn't feel natural. It felt rehearsed. Later that afternoon she snapped at me for leaving my shoes near the door. 5 minutes after that she apologized and asked if I wanted to watch a movie together. By evening she barely spoke to me at all, scrolling through her phone with a distant expression. She was unpredictable, kind, irritated, distant, then kind again. She sensed something had shifted. She just didn't know what. Over the next few days I watched her closely. I noticed how she paused before answering simple questions, as if choosing her words carefully. How she kept her phone closer than usual. How she studied my face when she thought I wasn't looking. One evening she walked into the room while I was folding laundry. "You're quiet lately," she said, her tone soft but her eyes sharp. "Just thinking," I replied. "About what?" "Life." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Well, if you ever want to talk, I'm here." The irony almost made me laugh. That night I called my older cousin Daniel. He had always been the steady one in the family, the person who listened without judgment. When I told him what I found, he didn't interrupt. He didn't rush to give advice. He let me speak until I ran out of words. When I finished, he exhaled softly. "You didn't deserve that," he said. "And you're not wrong for feeling hurt." I swallowed hard. "I keep wondering if I'm overreacting." "You're not," he said firmly. "Emotional betrayal doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it hides behind jokes. Sometimes behind excuses. But it still hurts." His words steadied me. I felt something inside me settle, like a puzzle piece finally clicking into place. I wasn't alone. I wasn't imagining things. Someone else saw the truth too. Over the next few days I prepared quietly. I saved one recording on my phone, the one that captured her laughing as she shared my private thoughts with her sister. I rehearsed what I would say, not to embarrass her, but to finally speak the truth she had been hiding behind. The family dinner was coming up. A simple gathering. Nothing dramatic. But I knew it would be the moment everything changed. I didn't plan a speech. I didn't plan a confrontation. I planned honesty. Calm, steady honesty. The night before the dinner, she sat beside me on the couch, scrolling through her phone. "Tomorrow should be fun," she said casually. I nodded. "It should." She looked at me for a moment, studying my face. "You sure you're okay?" "I'm sure." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes. But she didn't push further. Later, when she went to bed, I sat alone in the living room, listening to the quiet hum of the house. I opened the recording one last time, letting the truth settle into my chest. Not to hurt myself, but to remind myself why I needed to stop pretending. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't anger. This was clarity. She had created the moment. I was simply choosing not to hide from it anymore. And as I turned off the phone and sat in the dim light of the living room, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Strength. Quiet, steady strength. The kind that comes when you finally stop ignoring the truth. I walked into the dining room with the recording still saved on my phone, the weight of it sitting in my pocket like a quiet truth waiting to be spoken. The table was already set, warm lights hanging above, soft music playing in the background, dishes clinking as her mother arranged the last of the serving bowls. The smell of roasted vegetables and fresh bread filled the room, wrapping everything in a cozy, familiar warmth. It should have felt comforting. Instead, it felt like a stage. My wife was already in her element, greeting everyone with her usual bright confidence. She laughed easily, touched her sister's arm as she spoke, and moved around the room with the same practiced charm she always used at family gatherings. If anyone looked at her, they'd see a woman completely at ease. But I saw the small signs, the way her eyes flicked toward me every few seconds, the slight tension in her shoulders, the way she kept smoothing her dress as if trying to steady herself. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know when. I took my seat at the table, forcing myself to breathe evenly. Her father asked about work, her mother asked if I wanted more water, and her sister made a comment about the weather. Everything felt normal on the surface, but underneath it all, I felt the tension humming like a low vibration. I kept my answers short, polite, steady. I didn't want to give anything away too soon. As the meal began, the conversation flowed easily. Her family talked about weekend plans, neighborhood gossip, and a cousin's upcoming wedding. My wife chimed in often, her voice light and cheerful. She seemed determined to keep the atmosphere bright, as if she could talk fast enough to outrun the truth. Then it happened. She leaned back in her chair, picked up her glass, and said with a playful grin, "You all know how trusting he is. Sometimes I swear he'd believe anything." Her sister laughed immediately, nodding. "Oh, absolutely. Remember when?" I felt the words hit me not because they were new but because of how casually she said them. As if nothing had changed. As if she hadn't spent months recording me. As if she hadn't shared my private thoughts like entertainment. I kept my expression calm, but inside something settled. This was the moment. She continued, adding a small joke about how I once misplaced my keys and spent an hour looking for them. It wasn't a big joke. It wasn't cruel. But it was enough. Enough to remind me of every recording. Every whisper. Every laugh she shared behind my back. Her sister laughed again, louder this time, completely unaware of what was coming. I set my fork down gently. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "there's something I want everyone to hear." The table quieted. Her sister looked curious. Her mother paused mid-reach for the salt. My wife froze. What is it? Her father asked. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. My wife's eyes widened instantly, her smile faltering. He knew. She knew exactly what I was about to do. Wait, she said quickly, her voice tight. Can we talk about this later? I didn't look at her. I unlocked my phone, opened the recording and pressed play. Her voice filled the room. Not her cheerful dinner table voice. Not her polite, charming voice. Her real voice. The one she used when she thought no one else was listening. The recording played clearly. Me speaking softly about something personal. Her laughing in the background. Her whispering to her sister, listen to this part, it's hilarious. The room went silent. Her smirk vanished instantly, replaced by a look I had never seen on her face before. Fear mixed with disbelief. Her sister's smile faded as she leaned closer, listening with wide eyes. Her mother's hand slowly lowered from the air, the salt shaker forgotten. Her father's expression hardened, confusion turning into something sharper. My wife reached across the table. Turn it off, she whispered urgently. Please. I didn't. I let the recording finish. Every second of it. Every laugh. Every whispered comment. Every moment she had shared without my knowledge. When it ended, the silence felt heavy enough to touch. Her sister was the first to speak. You recorded him? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. My wife swallowed hard. It's not what it sounds like. Her father leaned forward. Then what is it? She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. I was just venting. We all vent. Her mother shook her head slowly. This isn't venting. My wife's eyes darted around the table, searching for support. You're all overreacting. It was just a joke. Her sister looked at her with disbelief. You sent me recordings of your husband. Private conversations. Why would you do that? My wife's voice cracked. I didn't think he'd ever hear them. Her father exhaled sharply. That's the problem. She turned to me then, her voice trembling. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I met her eyes. You didn't think it would matter. She shook her head quickly. No, that's not, I didn't think. That's the point, I said quietly. Her confidence collapsed completely. She looked smaller, her shoulders hunched, her hands shaking slightly. The woman who had walked into the dinner with a bright smile and a teasing tone was gone. In her place was someone who finally understood the weight of what she had done. The rest of the dinner unfolded in uncomfortable silence. No one reached for seconds. No one made small talk. No one laughed. Her sister avoided her eyes. Her parents exchanged quiet glances. My wife sat stiffly, staring at her plate, her earlier confidence replaced by a heavy stillness. When the meal ended, I stood up slowly. Thank you for dinner, I said to her parents. Her mother nodded gently. Take care of yourself, she whispered. I walked toward the door, feeling the cool air from the hallway brush against my skin. My wife followed a few steps behind, but she didn't reach for me. She didn't speak. She just watched as I put on my jacket. For the first time in a long time, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness. Not relief. Just peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop carrying someone else's secrets. As I stepped outside into the quiet evening, I realized something simple and powerful. Standing up for myself wasn't about exposing her. It was about reclaiming the part of me I had ignored for too long. My dignity.